They're biting us in the ankles. They're threatening us with lawsuits. They're the minority, not us, and I'm sick of them.
Absolutely. I mean, I feel like...
You've seen what goes on college campuses with these little thugs, with these pig eyes walking around, threatening everybody? Little Nazi thugs pretending they're liberals? No one could say a word without the fear of a lawsuit or chanting or whistling or hissing? They're nothing. They're a tiny minority. It's time people stood up to them.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel alone, but by the way, I want to correct one thing. I didn't say that only white men listening to me. I said it is alleged that only white males listen to talk radio. I said I love white males, but that's not the only audience. This show is #1 in streaming radio in America with a 25 share of the audience. Rush has a 12 share by comparison. What does that mean? It means that 25% of all people who listen to streaming radio in America, talk radio that is, listen to Michael Savage. That's largely young people like yourself, incidentally.
Thank you so much for doing what you do.
Now, you're married, but are you allowed to read a novel, Countdown to Mecca? Would your husband object if I sent it to you?
My husband loves that I read and loves that I'm smart, so absolutely.
I'm just pulling your leg. Stay in the line. I'll send it out to you. It'll make a great Father's Day gift. If you have a father, you can give it to him. If not, you can read it yourself and give it to your husband. Let's go to the next caller. Line. Oh, what am I doing here? 15 minutes after the hour. KSFO Radio, line 3. Go ahead, please. Line 3. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Dr. Savage. Thank you so much for doing what you do. I'm just hanging out here yearning to be free, quote.
Thank you.
And I wanted to tie together a few threads. You know, you raised a very important point in your first hour about that I don't think many people caught, certainly not at the time several years ago. Apparently, the International Socialist Union at that time tied its wagon to the Islamists. And this was about the time of Tahrir Square, I believe. And
I'm very aware of the confluence of the Islamists and the socialists, and I know exactly why this is happening and how it's happening. In fact, I must tell you, I just finished a chapter of yet another book in which I cover that. So you go ahead, expound on it. I won't give away my own writings on it, but there's clearly an issue here of wanting to dominate overwhelm the culture from both sides.
Yeah, and it seems to reinforce the whole progressivism as insanity or stupidity, because they're going to be the cannon fodder or the useful idiots that get chewed up fastest once they're no longer useful.
Yes, the Muslim fanatics will throw them off rooftops. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. They're already doing it.
They're doing it in the Middle East, so why wouldn't they do it here?
Anywhere.
Why do we see American progressives defending Islam? Why do they make excuses for radical Islam's atrocities while branding anyone who criticizes them bigots? Why do they hold conferences on terrorism and exclude anyone who might talk about the threat of radical Islamist sleeper cells within our borders while focusing on the threat from American Christians, conservatives, and patriots instead? These are very important questions.
And I think probably to your point precisely that it goes to puppeteers and puppets and maybe clout.
Well, let's talk about the chief puppeteer, George Soros. Why would a man who allegedly escaped a Nazi concentration camp be funding most of these confluences between Islamism and progressivism? Why would he be suing states now with a $9 million grant to make certain that illegal aliens can vote? Why does he do this? Why does he hate this country so much? Why is the Soros family public enemy number one in this country to most clear-thinking people? Tell me why.
Probably because they've got that Aztec disease, right? Or the conquistador disease.
You mean where they can never get enough gold? Is that it? There's not enough gold in the world to feed their illness?
Yep. Damn straight.
Do you agree with me that we need another UAC, House of Un-American Activities Committee, or is that too much for us today?
I think you're right, and it's sad because it's been painted in such a.
Let me make it very clear. HUAC was a very important instrument in America, and virtually everyone they outed actually was a communist. Incidentally, we see movie after movie about the poor Hollywood writers who threw themselves off buildings because they were picked on and they were blacklisted. Tell me who's being blacklisted right now in America. I am being blacklisted in America, and I'm not throwing myself off a building so fast. I'm fighting back. I'm blacklisted by these SOB progressives in Hollywood, the SOB progressives on Fox News. I'm the one on the blacklist. I'll be right back.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN. Give us your tired, your poor, and your huddled masses, indeed. That's a very noble statement on the Statue of Liberty. And it was written at a time when there was no welfare state. Never forget the difference between a welfare state that gives away freebies to immigrants, not all of whom come here to work. No, they don't all come here to work. We know many of them work very, very hard. We are not blind. We are not deaf. We are not dumb. There are new houses going up near where I live, and I see who is toiling building them. I see it very well. But I also see that Michael Iger of Disney was very draconian like the Aztecs. Bob Iger, sorry, pardon me. I was thinking of Michael, whatever his name was, of Disney. Bob Iger runs it now, I think. And he forced IT workers at Disneyland to train counterparts from India who would then take their jobs at half the salary or such. So that's not about bringing in immigrants to work, is it? It's about bringing in immigrants to lower the cost of labor and to suck more money to the top. Apparently $46 million a year isn't enough for him. Maybe he needs $86 million a year so he doesn't feel inferior and incompetent next to the parties, the guys at the parties who really rape the treasury pretty good. They make billions. He only makes $46 million. He must feel like a pauper. So cut the costs a little bit more. Maybe the board will reward him even further. Throw out every American worker. Throw them out. Throw all Americans out of America. Make it a really safe country for immigrants. Get rid of every American born here. 855-407-282, Savage Nation, WABC in New York. Tina, go ahead. What's on your mind? Fire away. You got 2 minutes.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I'm listening to you for 10 years, but I will be honest with you, I was afraid to call because I thought if my boss listens, what I have to say, I'm going to be fired. I used to work as a nurse. And I was fired one time from a medical adult daycare because I refused to commit Medicaid fraud.
In other words, as a nurse, they want you to fill out fake paperwork so they could all cash in on it?
Right. So you always talk about adults bringing their children to this country. I want to tell you about kids bringing their parents to this country.
Yeah, of course. They get a nice free ride here, don't they? I know about the anchor babies law. You're talking about the anchor parents law, where they bring in their sick parents and dump them on the country, and we have to give them a Rolls-Royce care. I get it. I see it. I talk to doctors. I know what's going on.
Not necessarily sick parents. They don't have to be sick. But if you're over 65 and you never work here, so you don't have a pension, when you have Medicaid through the whole country, not just my state, if you are a Medicaid person, right, you are entitled not just to regular health care, you're entitled to all the services. So,
of course. I know all the good liberal social workers come to them and give them all the care they're entitled to. I love the word entitled to, don't you?
Right.
Who entitled them with anything? Who entitled them with anything? We're almost flat out of time in this segment. I'm sending you my new novel. It's not in Russian. It's in English, called Countdown to Mecca. Maybe it'll be translated into Russian. I'm sure if Vladimir Putin read it, he'd love it. In fact, I would send him a free copy. I certainly wouldn't send a free copy to Hillary Clinton, who called him Hitler, looking to start World War III, along with Jeb Bush, looking to start World War III, that nincompoop. What a hope he is. What a great hope he is for America. That Jeb Bushman. I'll be right back. Be here or be nowhere.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Nobody can get any relief. That's why they're all stoned out of their gourd on prescription drugs. Meanwhile, condemning the crack dealer on the street. They ought to condemn the doctor who gave him the antidepressant. He's a bigger drug dealer than the crack dealer. Play it again. That's all. Oh, by the way, a reindeer in the Bay Area. It's beautiful. It's like Irish Spring. They won't report it in the paper, though. It counters the whole myth of, that there may never be rain again. I guess Jerry Brown did a rain dance somewhere in Sacramento. Imagine him naked on the roof of the state capitol praying for rain. Actually, in Jerry Brown's case, I imagine he'd do a rain dance praying there would never be rain, so they continue to gouge the taxpayer and build those speed trains to nowhere. and talk about global warming. Meanwhile, the idiot in the White House, the criminal bully in the White House, you're not going to believe this story. I'm not making this up. This could come out of only a mad comic, but it's true. Obama's EPA is targeting greenhouse gas emissions from commercial aircraft. The idiot moron psychopaths, the college girls, will restrict greenhouse gas emissions from commercial jets. The latest in a long line of steps the dumb house has taken to address so-called climate change. Now, if they would begin by limiting greenhouse gas emissions from the gangsters Air Force One, Air Force Two, and Air Force Three, I would say, okay, then there's some validity to it. If Al Capone's personal plane were to, let's say, fly on banana peels or something to that effect, I would say, okay, at least they're not hypocrites. But they're going to restrict greenhouse gas emissions from your jets? How are they going to do that? The so-called EPA, the bullies in the EPA, the idiots in the EPA, will begin crafting standards and expects to formally adopt them early next year. You see, U.S. aircraft account for about 11% of greenhouse gas emissions, the agency said. And so they want to impose restrictions on the aircraft sector. I think they ought to apply it to our fighter jets, frankly, first, because the fighter jets are terrible emitters. I mean, if you've been on an aircraft carrier and watched those FA-18 Hornets take off and land, I mean, you see the flames shooting out of the back of that plane. Do you realize what that's doing to the environment? And while you're at it, you ought to restrict greenhouse gas emissions from guns. I mean, there's probably not a greater greenhouse gas emitter than a gun. Think every time a cop fires a bullet on a target range, every time one of our soldiers or Marines learns how to shoot a rifle, aren't they destroying the environment? Think of that, the waste of energy. And think of what could be done there if only one of the cockamamie crazy lawyers unleashed himself on the courts. This is an example of bullying. Not only bullying, but insane bullies. You know, there used to be an old phrase, the inmates are running the asylum. In this case, they're bullying inmates running the American asylum. These are not just inmates that you can laugh at. These are very dangerous, drug-addicted inmates who are bullying everyone in sight. They are dangerous, drug-addicted bullies, and they're bullying everybody with threats of lawsuits. So Air Force One that takes him golfing or Michelle on vacation, I think that should be reined in. See, this administration is using the EPA and his other fascist agencies to destroy one industry at a time. They want to take down one industry at a time. Now, you're worried about greenhouse gas emissions. Then why did Air Force One and Air Force Two be used last year? Because Michelle wanted to fly in a different plane as her husband. How about that for a greenhouse gas emission? Michelle and her entourage in Air Force One. Obama on Air Force Two. Why? Why? Tell me why. How about the fleet that Congress uses to jet around the world? How about Nancy Pelosi's use of military jets? Yeah, okay, you get the picture. It's the mother of all shakedowns. It is the largest theft of wealth the world will ever have seen. The science is not clear at all. There's no science here. It's Lysenkoism. It's invented science. East Anglia University manipulated data to reflect global warming when there was no global warming. You understand that? They just changed the hockey stick into a putty ball. The only reason Obama has waged a war on coal is for what reason? To make sure the gangsters in the green business profit from it. The gangsters in the green energy business have profited like you've never seen in your life because they're bullies and thieves. We're going to talk about bullies and thieves when I return right here on the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Wherever you go, you will encounter people who doubt your very existence. Folks who believe that hard-working families with strong values don't exist on the south side of Chicago or in Detroit or in El Paso or in Indian country or in Appalachia. They don't believe you are real.
So she's become one of the chief bullies now in America. Whatever happened to the quiet first lady, the dignified first lady, the first lady who did civic things? How did